Right, 7 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Do you remember a song? I think it was a Neil Sedaka song, just to kind of show you how old I am. And it was called The Hungry Years. Do you remember that song by chance?
I think I remember the title. I don't know how it goes. I can't recall.
Well, the message in the song was that the two people in the song were happier when they were not successful. They were the hungry years were the real happy years, you know? Mm-hmm. And I guess a lot of us can understand that. You don't realize it when you're living it. And then when you are successful, you are saying, well, gosh, I thought this was supposed to be happy times. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it looks like it is from the outside looking in. And then you find out the truth. Well, life is what it is, you know? And so what do? We turn to religion. We turn to whatever. And sometimes things work for us and sometimes they don't. What's the real secret, though? What's the real secret to finally realizing, okay, I can live my life, wake up, do what I've got to do, go to bed at night, and say, oh, that was a great day, and then do another one after that. Dr. Anna Yusim is on the phone. Dr. Anna is a psychiatrist who has helped more than 1,000 patients lead happier, more meaningful lives. She's a neurobiology researcher. She worked in over 50 countries. She's the recipient of numerous awards and distinctions, and her book that'll help us with all of those things I just said is called FulFilled, an appropriate title, How the Science of Spirituality Can Help You Live a Happier, More Meaningful Life. Good morning, Dr. Yusim. Good morning.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Where are you calling from?
I'm in New York City.
Well, thank you for being there. We're going to be in New York in November, and your publicist is Donna Gould, and we love Donna.
Yes.
So we've worked with Donna for years. We're going to meet her for the first time, so that makes me happy.
Oh, well, I'm going to meet her for the first time tonight at my book launch, actually, so that makes two of us.
Oh, are you really? Well,
Nice.
tell her we're going to be there in November, and we're going to take her out to get a Subway sandwich.
That's right.
Oh, I love it. I'm sure she will absolutely love that. She is such a special person.
She's really one of our favorites. Well, thank you for being on the air. So how do you tell people to recognize that they're not as happy as they could be? How do people know that?
Yeah, and, I feel, goal isn't to help people recognize, that they're less happy than they could or should be. It's really when people come to me with pain or suffering of some sort, it's helping them identify the root cause and helping them connect that to not just the symptoms of their pain, but also, the disconnection that they often have from their own soul.
Are we usually right? In other words, if I'm sitting with you and it's just me and you in the room and I say, I don't know, I'm not happy, and you say, what's wrong? And I tell you what I think it is, are we usually right about that? Like maybe I'll say, well, I'm divorced, or well, my dog died, or well, this went wrong, or I'm bankrupt or something. Are we usually right about what's causing the problems?
Yeah, and, it's such an interesting question, what really is at the root of pain and suffering? And oftentimes what brings somebody to therapy, like a divorce or their dog dying or something like that, that is kind of the impetus for change. That is what really helps people to go in and start examining themselves in a more introspective way. But as we get into things, we realize that it's the tip of the iceberg, and usually underneath are deeper patterns of behavior that usually have been with the person for a much longer time. And, it's at that level, the level of more personality change, that some of the true work of therapy starts to take place.
Really? We had a guest on not too long ago who had lived in communist Germany, East Germany. Mm-hmm. And then when the wall came down, they were all excited, and she went to West Germany, and it was so nice that she actually got depressed. she was actually longing for the harder times. She eventually got over it, but that was an interesting thing to hear. You would think that, a fish getting back into its water would be happy to be swimming again.
It's true, and it's so interesting because when you think about stress, some of the most stressful times in people's lives are some of the happiest times. Big moves, job, transitions, getting promotions, marriages, those are really positive times, but on the stress rating scale, they're really, really high up there. So I wonder if it was the lack of familiarity, the uncertainty, the newness, not knowing who this person would be in this new space that led to some of those feelings.
Ooh, the psychiatrist in you just came out, didn't she? Yeah, that was good. So how do we use the book? Do we use the book to kind of self-analyze?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was hoping to do with this book. It's to give a series of things and 50 cases of patients going through all the different trials and tribulations of life. 50 patients from my private practice, of course, described, and disguised, very, disguised, in order to help people identify with the different characters and identify parts of themselves that they want to change and ways that they themselves want to grow.
In your book is labeled as being interactive.
Yes, and so with each chapter, there's also 2 or 3 exercises throughout, because in addition to the theory as to, what could be at the root of some of the pain that we have as human beings, it's also exercises of how to change that pain, exercises of how to find fulfillment.
How about when the pain comes from outside sources and not inward from yourself? You're happy with your life, but other people seem to want to run it.
Right, exactly. Like feeling controlled by others, absolutely. Or just the fact that things happen in life and none of us are immune to the death of loved ones, the ending of relationships, sickness in some form, unexpected transitions. And those things certainly could, run like amok in our minds and wreak havoc on our lives if we don't have a firm foundation with which to a social support system, people that can support us through it, and also some coping mechanisms of our own.
Let's shift to the spirituality part of what the book explores. At the risk of saying this again, our listeners have heard me say this one a few times, but when I was a little kid, I saw an angel, or I believe I did anyway, and the angel told me where my keys were. 4 years old, I didn't have any keys that went to anything, but they were just toys, and I lost them, and the angel told me where they were, and they were where the angel told me they were. The angel was a female, by the way. And so I didn't think two things about it, but all of my life, I wondered, how come an angel told me where my keys were, but like when I was going through this hard time and that hard time, how come the angel didn't show up then? Well, the book is sort of saying to me that the angel was there all the time. I just didn't see her. Am I right?
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful story. And, it's often said that as children, we don't have, like, all of the barriers to seeing this other world, kind of this more esoteric world, so children could connect more with angels and with spiritual beings and get guidance in that way. But then as we get older, we have sort of societal conceptions of what can and can't be. So the angels could still be there, but we learn to close our eyes without even realizing it.
There was a part of the book where you're quoting from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she has a story on using cameras to take pictures of guides or fairies. I guess it depends on what you believe they are. Can you retell that story and explain what the significance is of it?
Yes. And so Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is one of the, foremost death researchers in the world, and she came up with the 5 stages of healing from any sort of bereavement or loss. And in this particular section you're talking about, she believes in spirit guides. And spirit guides are these entities that could be with us at all times, that can help guide us, that can help give us messages, that could create circumstances in our lives when we're in danger to help us, things of that nature. And, she's a scientist, but she believed in these spirit guides. And one day she learned from somebody that you can actually take a photo of your spirit guide. And that's precisely what she did. She asked her spirit guide to come to the forefront, and she took a photo. And lo and behold, that photo was actually a picture of an American Indian man who she took to be her spirit guide.
Wow.
And these things that are so strange when it comes to, science and the Western medical model of the mind. But in other cultures, these sorts of things are very accepted. And, like you yourself described, Larry, it's something that we all experience in some way, shape, or form in little bits and pieces here and there.
Can I ask you this question? If we all knew for sure that we all had spirit guides and the spirit guides would always be there for our best interest, that would make it so much easier to walk away from something that we felt was holding us back. Because the reason we don't leave something that's holding us back, whether it's a job or a marriage or something, is because we're afraid we're not going to have anything else to fall back on. But maybe what you're saying is a spirit guide would help us out no matter what we do.
Precisely. And what, you're alluding to is that so many of us stay in situations where, we're partially happy, a little happy, or maybe even quite unhappy out of fear. And it's fear of being alone, fear of the unknown, fear of what if I never meet anyone, what if I then fear abandon, what if I have to grow old, alone, like those sorts of fears. And those are such normal human fears. But it's true that, having, like, the antidote also often to fear is faith. Is being able to have faith in the process that, you aren't alone in this world, that there actually is something greater than you, whatever that is, whether it be the universe or God or a higher power or Mother Nature, that's actually propelling you forward to be the best version of yourself and will create the opportunities for you to learn, grow, and transform and bring the right people into your life to do that beside you.
Well, since you've worked in over 50 different countries, have you found a lot of what you have in your book is universal?
It's actually, I think some of these ideas are much more common in other cultures than they are in America. In my work, I lived in ashrams in India. I studied Buddhist meditation. I work with shaman in South America and South Africa, and I studied Kabbalah. And the idea that the world is much more complex than science currently has the capacity to learn and understand is actually part of the belief system of so many cultures. Cultures that believe in reincarnation, that the, transcendence of the soul, that the body, that rather than us being physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences, this idea that we're actually spiritual beings having this temporary physical experience. And so I think other cultures actually have much more of those ideas than our own culture.
So do you pray to your guide? Do you pray to God, or what role does prayer play at all?
Yeah, and so prayer, it's a very interesting thing because there's so many aspects to prayer. One of them is clarity. When you pray, you're getting clear about what you really want. Before you can pray, you have to know what you want.
Yeah.
And so many people don't know what they want.
It's true.
Yeah, and two is the idea of intentionality. When you pray for something, you're saying, I'm going to have this. I'm going to have this, and I have the confidence that and I'm going to ask for help to get this too. So the intentionality. And then three, it's the idea of surrender, to realize that it's not you alone having to bring this into your life, but you do the work that you need to do in the physical world and realize that there's something greater than you that's also helping to propel you along and is there beside you as you do your work.
When you did all the research for the book and you came across the individuals, did they know you were doing the research? And if they did, were they conducive to letting you share their stories?
Yes. And so it's such an important question because as a psychiatrist, one of the key elements of any treatment is confidentiality, because my patients come to me and they entrust me with very personal details of their lives. So whenever, a psychiatrist or any doctor shares personal details of their patients' lives, you first have to get consent. But in my case, every case is so disguised to the point where sometimes the patients can't even recognize themselves. Sometimes they can. And different patients have given different levels of, confidentiality in the case based on the patient's consent. But every patient who's included in the book has read their story, has given me feedback, editorial feedback where appropriate, and has approved it both in writing and through the word, through just written, spoken word.
It's really a fascinating conversation. Dr. Anna Yusim is our guest, and the book is called FulFilled: How the Science of Spirituality Can Help You Live a Happier, More Meaningful Life. I want to ask you about the science part of this, the science of spirituality part, because I'm guessing that most people who benefit in some way from their religious beliefs, from their religious rituals, the things that they do, whether it's church or whether it's at home or in their car whatever it is, whatever their relationship is with the spirit world, with God, with any other deity, okay, I'm guessing they don't think of it as a science. And I'm wondering if that's important. If they benefit from it, wouldn't that be the only thing that would really matter to them?
Right, yes. And it's such an interesting question because that's precisely the crux of the issue. Science is often, to be scientific, it has to be reproducible, it has to be tested through a double-blind controlled study, it has to be repeatable, it has to be fully understood how the mechanism works. Whereas spiritual experiences are often so subjective and not reproducible and intensely personal and sacred. And, anyone who's experienced a miracle, usually you don't experience two, right, in the same way. And so on one hand, they seem fundamentally incompatible, but because in the Western world, kind of the currency of knowledge and exchange really is science, people are increasingly finding more and more methods to study some of these spiritual phenomena.
So
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, we had a conversation with somebody who said he was atheist, and I said, well, do you believe in intelligent life? And he said, no, I told you I'm an atheist. And I said, well, do you believe that there is intelligence in life? And what do you mean? Well, I mean, the flower knows to attract a bee, and the bee knows somehow to go into that flower to get the pollen, and somehow the pollen knows how to attach itself to the other half so that it can grow, and all of those things that happen in nature seem to. We have to use the word know in order to explain that they do. How does a root know? How does it know to get water? All those things that require the word know in order to ask the question. So is there knowledge in life? And he said, well, it sounds like there must be. So how could there be no intelligence if intelligence is at the core of everything that exists, every living thing anyway?
Right. The greater order and the complexity of how things work in this world certainly do seem to suggest that there's something greater at play. And, oftentimes this idea of intelligent design and evolution, I truly feel it's a false dichotomy and that they are actually quite compatible. You can have the evolutionary standpoint of the mechanism through which mutations over time will have certain traits, come to the forefront and others not. But then also there could indeed be, some sort of force greater than us that's helping to guide things forward.
And how about the acceptance of different cultures? I know in in all cultures there are bad guys, but I think on the whole that when you're talking about Eastern medicine and Western medicine, people are becoming more accepted of the fact that there are different ways to help a problem they should have.
Yes, I very much believe so. And it's interesting because my book probably would have been viewed by many colleagues in my profession, by other psychiatrists, as very much in the complementary, alternative, perspective. Just like you're saying, complementary and alternative medicine is becoming much more accepted. But two presidents of the former American Psychiatric Association have endorsed the book. So in a way, this shows that psychiatrists are standing behind these ideas as well.
Well, I think there is a science behind spirituality. I've always thought that. It just makes more sense to say, okay, if you say it rains because God made it rain, or if you say it rains because water condensed and fell out of the sky, well, you're kind of saying how it was done, not necessarily who it was done by. But I think everything is done with, there's a way that everything is done. Even if I do something, it doesn't mean I didn't do it or I didn't have a way of doing it. So. The book is called FulFilled, and I wanted to find it on Amazon so I can tell you that. I have a copy of the book here, so if I have somebody who would like the book I have, call me right now, 622-9622, and the book is yours. Can you tell me what would you recommend? Do you have a website, Doctor?
Sure, yes. You can get the book on Amazon. You can get it in any bookstore. Today is the launch date, so it becomes available today. Or you can get it on my website, AnnaYusim.com, which is ANNAYU, S as in Sam, I, M as in Mary.com.
Sometimes people have a hard time distinguishing between joy and happiness. They think it's one and the same. And I think they're different.
Yeah, and oftentimes, happiness is something that is more constant and low grade, and it's a sense of contentment. It's not something that is as intense or acute as, unadulterated joy. Joy means, you can have pain that has an opposite, whereas happiness is more just something that, could be with you at all times, even amidst hardship and difficulty.
You know, it's interesting. Quite often in our lives, we run into people who are facing problems, and the advice sometimes would be, you need to speak to somebody in the clergy or somebody who's a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And it's interesting how your profession and the profession of somebody in religious leadership, whether it's a rabbi or a pastor or something, it's interesting how we look toward everybody. You're on like the same page, you just deliver the message in a different way.
Right, and that's, I think, that's precisely it, because the message of healing, there's, many different paths to truth, and there's many different ways to heal, but it all comes down to the same basic principles, and those principles are principles of love and peace and unity and tolerance, and those things which bring us closer to one another and enable us to see the commonality of other human beings.
Well, I'm going to try the camera trick, by the way. I'm going to...
You have to ask your spirit guide to come and then take a picture.
Have you tried it?
I haven't yet, but I too, it's in the back of my mind to try as well.
Oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see if I get anything at all. All right, let me give this copy away. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
This is Lauren, and thank you so much.
You're welcome, Lauren. It'll be waiting for you here.
Thank you, and thank you, Doctor. Beautiful topic.
It is a beautiful topic. Thank you. And have fun with Donna today. I can't wait to meet her. She's my favorite publicist. And where are you doing a book signing?
We're going to have a launch party today in Tribeca, which is in downtown New York City.
Gotcha. I know the area very well. Thank you for being with us today. Have fun with Donna. And hey, tell her that we're coming up in November and we're going to get her a Subway sandwich.
I most definitely will. Thank you so much, Larry and Robin.
That was fun. All right, we will take a little break. We'll be right back. This is WOCA Ocala.